Hey everybody, and welcome to the long overdue second episode of Megaten Minute. I'm your host, Knock. Maybe eventually I'll give out my real name. I don't know. Not really feeling it right now though. But I'm your host, Knock. Today we're gonna be covering Vaporware. I'm gonna gloss over the news a bit. Sorry. When I wrote this episode initially, I actually had like 6 or 7 news stories. But over time, I pretty much kind of lagged, and now they're not so newsworthy anymore. So, like the last thing, I guess one of the biggest things I was gonna talk about was the Winter Wonderfest, which happened like almost 3 weeks ago now. So, anyway, Vaporware. What is Vaporware? Well, Google says it's software or hardware that has been advertised but is not available yet to buy, either because it is only a concept or because it is still being written or designed. And there's a few teeny instances in which we can kind of speculate about Megaten vaporware, and I'm gonna do just that. So the big ones are the Devilizer patent, the Vita SMT game, and the PS3 SMT game. There's going to be pretty much a common element in these, and the common element is really that there never any substantial proof regarding the games being more than just a concept or even them existing at all. So, Devilizer. The Devilizer sounds intense. It sounds dramatic. It sounds spoopy and edgy. It sounds like SMT. And this one here goes back to 2013. This is around the time that Atlas was up for auction and bought up by Sega for $113 million. That's the price of Atlas, or at least that was the price of Atlas. Index, the parent company for Atlas, registered the name Devilizer. The English and Japanese speaking fan bases kind of blew up with speculation. People were thinking new IP, sequel, sequel to a Megaten game, or I don't know, just a new IP in the franchise altogether. People were just kind of excited. Well, here's my take. It's kind of a common take, so I'm going to go ahead and drop it. Devilizer sounds an awful lot like the devil summoning tool used in Devil Children. That tool was not unlike the Gump in the Devil Summoner world. It is called the Devil Riser. Now, this seems kind of out of left field, but level with me. Okay, so the last major game for Devil Children was released back in 2011, so that's only 2 years prior to the Devilizer patent. That game was a mobile game, but it kind of served as a soft sequel to Messiah Riser, and that sounds familiar, right? Well, the Messiah Riser is kind of the MacGuffin of the Devil Risers. There's a couple of different variations of this devil summoning gun, because it's essentially the same thing as a Gump or the Evoker. It's pretty much the same thing. So then the Devil Riser is like the basic version. There's a King Riser, which is somewhat better, and then there's the Messiah Riser, which is the MacGuffin. Um, and the reason why I bring up that game is that Devil Riser being patented and saying that it's a Devil Children game seems kind of weird, but then when you consider that one of the games was literally titled Messiah Riser or Devil Children Messiah Riser, and it was the the precursor to the Devil Survivor games, and then by that I mean it was also a SRPG, and in some regards it's actually better than Devil. And in some regards, it was actually better than the Devil Survivor games, in my opinion, in terms of style of gameplay. And we've had a couple of other Megaten games that were SRPGs in the past, Majin Tensei being one of the most commonly known. There's a few mobile games, but Messiah Riser is one that's often overlooked, and so is the Last Bible game, or Entrant, Another Bible, which, while being completely different, it really does stand out as a quality game. I rather enjoyed it. And, what's not to love about chibi Last Bible characters in a game that doesn't really sit in the Last Bible universe very well. But anyway, Devil Riser probably Devil Children. Our Devil Eyes are probably Devil Children. And I'm gonna give some other evidence. The reason why I think it probably was there and might possibly return is because although this trademark is pretty arbitrary, it could still stand that we're gonna get the game. For all we know, that 3DS game or even the Switch title could be the next Devil Children game. And yes, I would actually be heavily enthused to play HD Devil Children on the Switch. I mean, I'm probably in the minority in the at least English speaking community, but I digress. There's some other evidence to kind of back it. And Multimedia Transfer, which is the company that was contracted to develop many of the Devil Children games, some of the Last Bible games, Ronde, and some other titles, they actually were looking to hire around the time, so 2011-ish, or 2011 to 2013, they were looking to hire more people to work for them. Usually that's basic basic premise that says I'm going to be developing something that's more difficult than usual. So for all we know that could have been a 3D game, and that could be why they were bolstering their ranks. But the reason why it's kind of not as likely is okay. Well, it's been 4 years, and sure, that could be a development cycle for a game. It could even be a hectic development cycle, but the company Multimedia Transfer hasn't really updated their website in a while. They were going to start a blog talking about their company, and then they fell off the map. And that could be a sign that this game was never really meant to be. And even if it wasn't Devil Children and it was just them patenting something else for whatever reason, Devil Children is the most likely candidate in my opinion. So like 80% chance. Anyway, moving on. Back in 2005, Sony released a upcoming games list for the PS3, and we got a lot of those games coming into fruition over the years. But one that we didn't get was SMT, or it was just called Shin Megami Tensei title, or any number of things meaning that there's going to be a new SMT game. And that was on the list. This was back in 2005, and we did get a lot of Megaten games during that time for the PS2. We got Persona 3 the following year, as did. We also got Raito 1, and we got Persona 4 and Raito 2 after that. Digital Devil Saga, if you really want to talk about that, that came out a year prior and the year of. So that really begs the question: what did Sony mean when they said SMT game for the PS3? Did they mean, oh, we are going to be releasing a Megaten game, or there's Megaten games dedicated to Sony, most likely being for the PS3, and they just assumed that Atlas was going to do it? Were they in the talks, and maybe Atlas had agreed to do a PS3 game? Maybe they don't mean SMT. Maybe they just meant Megaten, and that could have been any of the games that I just mentioned. Like, could have been Digital Devil Saga or Raito, and instead of being released for the PS3, they just kind of stuck to the PS2. And there's a lot of reasons why it was a good move for Atlas to not do a PS3 game back in 2005. One of the major reasons why it was a horrible idea was, well, just look at the sales, or look at the cost to produce any of those games. One of the things that Atlas is pretty notorious for is reusing assets. So if you look at Nocturne, it basically spawned a bunch of these other Megaten titles. They reused the assets. They basically like redid a lot of the textures and the models and things like that, and even the code, just so they can cheaply make the next game. And this is a really good tactic for them, and it works very well. They do it all the time. Look at SMT 4 to Apocalypse, or even like just revamping the games, like any of the remakes or remasters they spit out. Like Soul Hackers is a pretty notorious game that really doesn't have that many changes to the original game, with exception to the extra dungeon that includes the other Raito and stuff like that. But so it was really in Atlas's best interest to kind of steer clear of the PS3 one, because it was brand new and costly, and they would have to actually make a new game from the ground up. They can't just use the Nocturne engine and just jam it into the PS3. It doesn't really work that way. So it wasn't really costly for them. I mean, cost effective, and it wasn't a good idea because they didn't even know how well the PS3 was going to sell. It wasn't jumping off the shelves initially. So why move to this console when you have the ridiculously successful PS2 to bank on? So I think all those things kind of prevented Alice from doing it, even if they did somehow agree to this arrangement. Or maybe they were referring to Persona 4. Maybe that was Arena, I mean. And maybe this was something that they had in the cards way back when, and it just got a lot of delays or whatever. I mean, I know that Atlas didn't initially initiate that development, but and like it was, I believe it was Arc Systems. Um, they didn't really get that ball rolling, but who knows? I mean, it was dropped 7 years later. 7 years doesn't seem like a unreasonable development cycle. And honestly, there could have been other games that this could be referring to. I'm one to believe that when they say SMT in Japan, because this is a Japanese announcement, that they meant mainline spinoff. And when I say mainline spinoff, I really mean Strange Journey, Nine, If, Devil Children, for whatever reason, has SMT in the title in Japan, the first Devil Summoner. And first and foremost, Imagine. So, Imagine is one of the games that actually has a ridiculously long development cycle. I believe it was something like 11 years. And it was meant, there's so many things that it was meant to be. First and foremost, I said that already. Wow, I've been using the same kinds of redundant turns of phrase a lot today. But it was meant to be a successor to Nine. Nine being the original MMO that never got the MMO component. So Imagine was a lot of that, and it took a long time to get Imagine pushed out. So my favorite theory is that Imagine was meant to be a PS3 game, and for whatever reason, that didn't happen, and it ended up becoming a PC game instead. Who knows? Obviously, I don't. Otherwise, I wouldn't have been talking about it for like 5 or 6 minutes. So maybe there was a game, and we just never got it, or maybe that it just was announced by Sony foolishly without ever really getting the okay from Alice, because companies do that sometimes. And this, keep in mind, this was a Sony announcement, not an Atlas announcement. Atlas had no verification that this was actually going to happen. And you know, maybe we did get the game in the end, but it wasn't what it was initially titled, which does happen too. Okay, before I get to the last one, I kind of want to talk about some other quote unquote vaporware. One of the ones I really want to talk about is Tokyo Mirage Sessions. So Tokyo Mirage Sessions, we got that game, right? But consider this. Initially, that game wasn't what we were going to get. And yes, I do understand the teaser was a teaser. It wasn't really meant to say this is exactly the kind of game we're going to get. It was really meant as a way of saying we are going to get a game that's a collaboration between these two companies. But, fans bought into it and kind of asserted their own opinions on what it must be. But some of the speculation wasn't half wrong. So Tokyo Mirage Session, in a sense, embodies a weird, turbulent development cycle, but it also embodies something that we could have got, but we didn't quite get. And what I mean by that is really think about some of the things they said in interview. One of the most interesting things they talk about is how they were bouncing off a lot of ideas of how to get this game. Initially, the Fire Emblem team, or Intelligent Systems, I believe they're called, they wanted to partner with Game Freaks and make a Pokemon slash Fire Emblem game together, collaboration. But then that didn't work because the Game Freak company was already working on that Musou game that was in collaboration with Konami. So because of that, Arc Systems, or I mean, sorry, Intelligence Systems decided to hit up Atlas and say, hey, let's make a game. Atlas was like, no, we're busy. True. Around the time they did this, this is the whole Atlas being bought by Sega. All kinds of reformation happened. They weren't sure of what they were going to be doing, and then they had all these games that were either being remade, remastered, or just being made. So then they were busy, but then eventually Intelligent Systems hit them up again, and they say, yes, let's do it. And weirdly, Intelligent Systems pushed Atlas to develop the game. They were like, let's see what kind of Fire Emblem game Atlas makes. So it was already not really what Atlas thought, because there were so many different things that Atlas wanted to do and so many ideas that got spitballed around. One of the most interesting things was the idea of doing a Fire Emblem slash Shin Megami Tensei MMO. That's one of the ideas they had. They weren't even sure if they're going to be on the 3DS or the Wii U. So we could have gotten this game on the on the 3DS, which would have been amazing. I would have preferred it, actually. They weren't sure if it was going to be a turn-based strategy game, if it was going to be a SRPG. Wait, is that the same thing? Ooh. Like, a lot of the stuff was up in the air, and what we ended up getting was a result of Fire Emblem's team really pushing Atlas to kind of take the reins and be more creative with their interpretation of what the crossover meant. Which is why we didn't get a very little interpretation of a crossover like Project X Zone ended up being. And we all know that that was a great game. Ha ha! Sorry, that's sarcasm. I don't know if that you can really read into that. But that's something I've always wanted to talk about, how although Tokyo Mirage Sessions wasn't the game that we were marketed, and although I really do love it, it's actually one of my favorite Megaten games of all time. Even though I don't really like idle games and I don't really like the story, I love the gameplay. People criticize it for being overly simple or very repetitive, but that's every Megaten game in my opinion. So that aside, yes, TMS, let's say that it was a partial vaporware. And there's a couple other games that had a turbulent development cycle, but that one was my favorite one. You could even argue that Strange Journey was a game that had a turbulent development cycle. It was gonna be SMT4 originally. Did you know? But anyway, in 2011, this is the last one I guess I'm gonna push out before we get into the questions. In 2011, at Tokyo Game Show, Sony boasted an array of new games coming to the Vita, one of which was simply labeled Shin Megami Tensei series. And before you go and say it was Persona 4 Golden, note that Persona 4 Golden was also on the list. Huh? Eh? And that also, one of the things I like to point out is that, yes, in Japan, SMT and Persona are not really, they're not called the same thing. So if you type in Shin Megami Tensei using kanji, you will not find Persona, or you most likely won't. Sometimes you'll find something, and it really depends. If you type in Megaten, you're more likely to find any kind of thing in the franchise, but then if you type in Shin Megami Tensei, you'll pretty much find mainline and any of the random things I like to call the mainline spin-offs, which all have the title, which I mentioned earlier. If you type in Persona, you will not find Demi-Fiend, but sometimes you'll find like the generic merch. So you might find the Mina no Kuji stuff, or like One Coin, or whatever you want to call it. But yes. So they're separate in Japan. I'm digressing a lot. That's just kind of how I talk. One of the feedbacks that I got was I need to be more natural, and this is kind of how I talk. So yeah, I teach. So I'm pretty long-winded. I mean, I'm one of the teachers that you probably get tired of listening to, but then I toss in some words just to see who's paying attention, and you'll be surprised how many people do catch those. Anyway, sorry. Back to Megaten. So, yes, Japan typically keeps SMT and Persona separated. This was announced at Tokyo Game Show, amongst other games. And yeah, whenever you look for the games or any kind of merch, even on the Atlas website, you won't find them together. So anyways, this is a long time ago. This is 6 years ago. And considering that when this list was kind of dumped, Persona 4 Golden was actually listed as that name, and we got it the following year. That kind of tells me that this game wasn't too far in development at all, or maybe it wasn't in development at all. It also makes me think that it was a SMT game. It wasn't any of these Persona games that came to the Vita through the PlayStation Network. To me, it really doesn't feel like it could have been Dancing All Night either, because, like I said, Persona SMT typically separate in Japan. So this could have had the same fate as the PS3 game. Could have been a miscommunication between Atlas and Sony. Could have been Sony just bolstering up their Vita game announcement so that more people could be excited for the Vita. It could have been something that that Atlas was thinking about, but then all this stuff happened with the whole, getting bought up by Sega, their parent company going bankrupt, and all that stuff. There's so many cogs in this machine that could have affected the concept of this game going into fruition that who knows. And given the Vita's life and or at least its longevity in Japan, I don't doubt that there's a chance we might get something. But seeing as we are in the SMT anniversary year, who's to say that we might get a special announcement that wasn't listed on the website or something? Atlas is known for surprises, so I wouldn't put that too far off into the distance, I guess. Okay. Anyway, let's move on to some of the questions. This is First off, I want to thank everyone for dumping all these questions. There's a lot of questions. And this video is already ridiculously long, so I'm not going to cover them all. I really appreciate the amount of feedback, questions, comments, encouraging remarks, likes on the video, all those things. They really give me good vibes, especially in a time like this. A time where we're not getting Persona 5 and we don't even know what Atlas is going to be doing with the series because, they're always hush hush until they are close enough to completion that they could actually announce what game it is. Anyway, so these are some questions from Facebook. Jeffrey O'Connor asks, "Hey, I saw your post looking for questions on the Megaten Minute. If you know, can you maybe make a comment on what Kazuma Kaneko is up to these days? Sorry if you get this question a lot." Hey, Jeff, I never get this question. This is the first time, actually. I posted that meme several times that I made. I'm super proud of it. But no, who knows what Kazuma Kaneko is up to? So far, we knew that he was making art for that historical manga series. His is the cover art featuring Oda Nobunaga, and it's a historical manga series that's going to drop in June of this year, and it's only going to cost like $8. Isn't that sad, or maybe that's amazing? I don't know. But for a series of manga featuring a bunch of art from a lot of these celebrity artists, it's gonna be $8. I'm probably gonna. Well, I want to buy it. I don't know if I'll get to it. Another thing that he's been up to is the fourth volume of Kaneko Works is meant to drop Q1, Q2, spring, summer. Various websites say various things, but it's supposed to come out soon, and he could be working on that. They haven't really given it a hard release date, so then that's why I feel like he's doing something relating to that. Maybe. We also got to remember that Kaneko, just like all the other old Atlas, like I don't know what you want to call them, the founding fathers or whatever, they were all pretty reclusive, and they didn't really do many interviews. They didn't really do many things that were in the media. They don't really handle social media very well. So his absence or lack of his lack of presence is really just a byproduct of when he became or of him. He's even mentioned in articles and interviews that he's a recluse and he doesn't really find himself being social. He doesn't really like people, so it makes sense that he wouldn't very well be on social media that much. So so I guess he's probably just hanging out. He could be doing art shows. He's done that in the past, so maybe there's that. Sorry, I didn't really answer your question. Robert Narcissian says, question. So, like, is Strange Journey basically SMT JoJo? I don't get that joke, except I know that they do make a reference to Another One Bites the Dust, which is a song from Queen. But it's also a move, I guess, by Killer Queen. I've seen this where one of the demons has the move bites the dust, and it basically causes a bomb ailment, and I guess that's the same thing that Another One Bites the Dust does in the Killer Queen stand or whatever. I do not watch JoJo or read JoJo. I just don't know too much about it. Sorry. So I'm probably butchering some of this information. But yes, technically, yeah, because strange is a synonym for bizarre, journey is a synonym for adventure. So strange journey is by definition a bizarre adventure. Heh, the more you know. Here it's on Almighty 2011. One of the guys I would like to thank for all their positive vibes, their interactions with me on social media. Thank you for that. They ask, what are your thoughts on Digital Devil Saga games? Or what are your thoughts on the Digital Devil Saga games? Personally, they are my favorite spin-off next to Persona 3, but I feel they're never talked about and nobody seems to know about them when I bring them up. So they suffer from being super obscure in the sense that they were released on the PS2 during the era where Alice in general wasn't a big selling name. Like, look at all the PS2 games that they released and count on your fingers and toes how many became cult classics. I mean, almost all of them did, but that's what I guess cult classics are. They're games that are, popular amongst a small group of people, but not necessarily known to the many. And that sucks because criminally underrated games like Digital Devil Saga are, they're criminally underrated. They're great. I personally prefer the original books. So, for those of you guys who don't know, Digital Devil Saga is known as Avatar Tuner Digital Devil Saga in Japan. The first game was co-written by, or mostly written by, Yugo Dai. She's a prominent author. She got sick during the production of the games, so she had to take a step back. So Tadashi Satomi, the guy who does the Persona games, or the first two games, he wrote the scripts for those. And he also wrote in a character based on himself in those games. He took over and he basically interpreted the next logical step in this narrative, or at least in his opinion. So it became very different from what Yugodai envisioned. And that's why she basically went back and wrote the books to kind of give her own take on the story that she was crafting, her own world that she was building. And I haven't read all of them. I've literally only read the first English one, and I've I've been looking at the summaries of the Japanese versions of the rest of the series, but there's like 5 books, and we only got one in English, and we're supposed to get the other one last year. Come on, Bento Books. But they're good. The games are very good. I love the voice acting. People kind of criticize a lot of the aspects of the game, but I love the voice acting. I love the character design. I love the world and its emphasis. I like how it possibly takes place in, spoiler alert, takes place in America, Oregon specifically. Those games are powerful to me. They were like, for me, who started off in 2004 playing Nocturne and then jumping into these games and then into Persona 3 and Persona 4, like those were like a powerhouse games. They really changed my interpretation of what video games are supposed to be like, and I am sad that not a lot of people are really into them. But at the same time, I'm even more upset that people aren't even into the other games that we got, either in English through translation from fans or official release that you can play through emulation very easily. So games like Jack Bros and Revelations of Demon Slayer, Last Bible 2, Another Bible, all these games that are just really, really good in my opinion. And no one really plays them, even though that they're available in English. And that's sad to me. It's more sad than when people say, oh, I don't play Persona 1 and 2, and more sad to me than people say they don't play Digital Devil Saga, because these games have a special place in my heart. And I guess that's why I get kind of upset or really passionate about the lack of interest in those kinds of games. So if you really want to impress me, go play Jack Bros and Demi Kids and stuff, and really try to form an opinion. Don't listen to the public perception of certain games, especially when you have games like Ronde, who people say are, oh, it's the worst game in the SMT franchise. No, no, no. In my opinion, that game is Card Summoner, and I played a lot of Megaten. Card Summoner does not stand a candle, or stand a candle? Is that a phrase? Do people use that phrase? It doesn't really hold up to even Ronde. Ronde has a lot of flaws, but in overall, at least they tried really hard with the writing. They adapted a mythology that they don't typically touch in Megaten. I mean, they kind of do that in Persona 2. They revisited it, but or not Megaten 2, Persona 2. But really, let's all, I guess, this question really made me kind of get on my soapbox. But everyone needs to be as objective and interested in the franchise as possible, in my opinion. You got to try everything and really try to see it not just from the current standards of what gaming is like, because you can't play Pong and go, man, this is the most revolutionary game ever, because you got games that vastly improved in every aspect of what made Pong impressive for its time. But you got to look at it through the lens of what it did for gaming, and even just in terms of what it is in and of itself. And by that I mean you gotta like take it at face value. You can't just go, man, this didn't age well. Don't think about it in terms of age. Think about it in terms of what it actually is. And you'll find that invariably most of these games are good. Some of them are even great. Um Sorry, soapbox. Okay. I'm gonna answer one more question, and I'm gonna cherry pick inverted animations, because they're another person who I've even started to talk to in messages, and they're cool. I really appreciate their positive feedback, their vibes and stuff, and I'm gonna link all these people in the description. I mean, not the Facebook people, because I don't think they want it, but they ask, what Megaten game would you recommend to people who are new to the series? Oh, okay. So this is a can of worms that I can't really get into right now. It's such a multifaceted question that all I can really say is A, try everything. It kind of ties into the rant that I just finished up. But really, every person who starts, or every person who possibly might be interested in the series, they all have different points of interest. In the same way that if I was gonna point the games to to old me, I probably would have told myself to play Jack Bros, and I would have fallen in love with the franchise even more deeply than me starting off with Nocturne. Um, you got to find the specific interest of that individual and tailor what you recommend to them. There's no cure all, so you cannot go Nocturne, play Nocturne because it's the best SMT game. There is no best SMT game. It's up to perception. I think Strange Journey is an amazing game, but I've seen people go out of the way to explain that Apocalypse is one of the best SMT games they've ever played. It really comes down to so many factors that I just say, when you see someone who's new to it, you need to ask them, hey, what kind of games do you like? What are some of the things you like in gaming? And really be able to tailor to them. Because even though I feel that Megaten is one of the best franchises of all time, like I feel very strongly about it, I know that it cannot be for everyone. Not everyone could stand some of the dry gameplays. Not everyone can stand some of the repetitive narrative or the lack of character development depending on the game. Not everyone can stand the music, because even though the music is great to me, doesn't mean everyone wants to listen to jazz or heavy metal, or actually, since Maguro and all the other composers are pretty multifaceted, there's a wide array of music. But not everybody likes those kinds of music or video game music at all. And I guess the point I'm trying to say is tailor it to the person. Figure out on a person to person basis what is good, and from there decide what you should recommend. That's pretty much the end of this episode. I'm sorry there was more than 20 questions. I'm not gonna answer them all. I'll probably squeeze them into the next one. This is a super long episode. I started this series off to be small and short. So I'm gonna just go ahead and say that's all, folks. What did you think? Do you like this more personable approach than me going off script and kind of just saying what I feel, as opposed to being very systematic about it? Be honest. Be harsh if you have to. Were there any Vaporware instances that I missed? Am I grasping at straws with this episode? No. Please say I'm not, though. Anyways, drop a like, drop a dislike if you didn't like it. That's fine too. Thanks for all the positive support. Thanks for all the comments and likes, and let's talk about what I should talk about next. Don't mention the timeline though, because that's gonna come separately, and it looks like it's gonna take a while for me to get to it. Anyway, I've been Knock. Thanks for watching.